And that's how the swinging bridge got. Then pretty soon, in a few weeks or months, I can't remember exactly now, but they came and they wanted to sell the whole property. Well, listen, that's good property. There was a good house on it. And if I remember, regardless of what my friend said, I bought the whole layout, I think somewhere around $34,000, and the house itself was worth that much. And somebody said, what are you going to do with it? Well, I said, we'll probably be a launching place to go to the moon. I said, I don't know what we're going to do with it, but we got it. And let me tell you something, it's been a wonderful thing. There's about 7 acres in there, and there's a lot of people who love to have it, but we got it.
That's right. The city.
I think he was on the council.
Right. It was a city. It's a city park now. For those that aren't familiar with this, I can remember that all taking place. That property did come up, and that we secured it, and it's a city park, and it's really a great area, and it helped develop the whole area, what we call Riverbend Rally,
That's right.
which has been developed over a 25-year period. And to kind of update everybody here,
Yeah.
we should tell them that with the acquisition of the Baptist Assembly Grounds, which is called Assembly Park now, the swinging bridge, then the city owned just a little of that riverfront property down there from Edgewood Place, and then all the way around the bend.
Yeah.
Now, that's called Earle Fitz Riverside Park now, isn't it? Riverbend Park?
Yeah.
And
Well,
that's part of the complex.
I'm awful proud of that.
You bet.
And another thing too, when I had an opportunity to buy that building, or that building, you know, where the Chamber of Commerce is now, I hesitated on that. But on the other hand, we got the job done, and I spent quite a little money, and it was well spent.
Yeah, you sure did. And I know the city participated with you on that, so that the city owns the whole complex all the way around.
That's right.
While we're on the subject, we talked about the river. You've been very active in the city of Iowa Falls. What about the Riverbend Rally? How many years has that the ski show been going?
Well, according to a newspaper I read, that was written by George Vest, is a quarter of a century that I worked with the river. And I've owned a boat ever since at least 50 years or more. And I've always been on the river. In fact, I was on Dale Drive for a number of years. And then I bought this place in '39 down here and built that. And then I got this about 10 years ago or so. I guess my wife ain't here, but about 10 or 12 years. Yeah, something like that.
Okay. Now, the ski show's been going on for 25 years, and it's still an annual event here in Iowa Falls. And we have turned, the city and you have turned the building you purchased where the Chamber of Commerce office is into a ski museum. It's got all the history of the whole Iowa Falls development of the ski show.
Well, I've enjoyed, in all my experiences, I used to keep a record of and letters of importance, and also I used to try to keep the good photographs. And therefore I built cases, and those cases cost a lot of money.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed doing it. Yeah.
Yeah, they're real nice. What I'd like to do now is let's go back and talk about Evie was your first wife.
Yes.
And Alan was your only child.
Only child.
And he was born about 1928.
He was born in let's see.
Maybe 1929, along in there somewhere.
I was married in 28. He was born about in 29.
Okay, 1929. Now, he grew up then here in Iowa Falls. He went to high school here in Ellsworth College. And then he married a gal, Ida.
Yeah.
And where was she from, do you remember?
Ida was here at that time. Her name is Nisley.
Okay.
And George Nisley was her dad. And I think, if I remember right, where they came from, I think is somewhere up in northern Wisconsin. I'm not sure. But they're I don't think they're a Mennonite family, but Ida is a wonderful girl, and she's made a good wife for Alan. And I think she does a lot of the book work for Alan, just like Betty does most of my book work, especially taxes.
Okay.
I like to keep out of jail if I can.
All right. Now, with Ida and Alan, you have some grandchildren.
They have 3.
Okay.
There's Susie. She's married to Shepherd. He's on the city council now.
That's Paul Shepherd.
Yeah, Paul Shepherd. And then there's little George. Well, Sally comes in next. And Sally, she's quite a character. She has a lot of fun. I guess she gets it from her grandfather, because there's nothing better than fun. There's only one thing better, more fun.
Okay.
Well, anyhow, and then came George. George was the last one. And George was born, most of these kids were born in Texas when Alan was in the Air Force. And then George has become a very handsome young man and a very intelligent boy. And he married a very nice girl from Esterville, Iowa. I think it's from Esterville, I'm not sure. And George has made quite an investment in Iowa Falls.
Yes, he sure has. Who did he marry? What was her name? Huh? His wife's name, George's.
Well, her name is, so my mind won't work right now. But they have 3 children, and they're all nice kids. They're very nice children.
So they're great-grandchildren to you.
Yeah, they're great-grandchildren. I don't guess they're my great-great-grandchildren. I don't know what to call them.
Great. 6 times? 6 good. Okay, 6 great-grandchildren. We're getting a little help here.
Yeah, I need help.
Folks.
Yeah.
Well,
I couldn't get along without Betty. She's a humdinger.
That's right. Okay,
yeah.
You got 6 great-grandchildren then, they're telling me.
Yeah.
Okay. So you got a pretty nice family all the way around.
Well, I think they're nice. They seem to be a good bunch. At least they make a living.
Okay, well, that's half of the battle.
Yeah.
You know. All right, then Evie died along about 1972, I understand.
About 72, I think. 70 or 172.
Okay. Then you were a bachelor a while, and then you did marry the second time.
Then I got married the second time. I married a girl named Linda Furman.
Okay.
And we had 2 children, and they're very lovely children. And one of them now is sponsored by a Rotary Club in Portland.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think I got a letter from her yesterday, and I think she's going to Mexico. And I think she'll either go to Mexico City or over in Yucatan, over in that area there. I've been to both places.
Okay, and she's about 16 years old now, along in there.
Yeah, she's about 16 years old.
Okay, then you also had a son, too.
Yeah, and he...
and that's Aaron.
Yeah, he's about 18 months younger.
Older or younger?
Younger. The boy's the youngest.
Yeah, I think Betty said that he's the oldest.
Ain't that right, Betty? The boy's the youngest, yeah.
He's the oldest.
Huh?
Aaron is the oldest boy. Okay, where do they live? They all live in Portland?
They live in Portland, Oregon.
Okay. All right, then you were married there for several years and kind of broke up then.
Yeah, well, it didn't work out. She wanted to be on her own.
Okay.
And I can't blame her for that. If she wants to be on her own, that's fine. And at least it filled in the gap there, because I was rather unhappy after I lost Evelyn. And therefore, anything looked pretty good.
All righty. Now, we moved on then, and she left and is now in Portland.
Yeah, well, but she went to New York City first. Then she went to up in Connecticut, and she was up there for a while.
Okay.
Then she came back to Iowa City, and she was there for a while. Then she went to Denver, and she was there for a while. And then from Denver, she went to... It wasn't Denver, it was a town right near Denver.
Okay.
And then she went to Portland, I believe.
Okay, then she wound up in Portland.
Yeah.
Okay, in the meantime, then, you were single again, and you met Betty.
I met Betty.
All right.
Yeah, Betty was a humdinger.
Okay.
Yeah, she's a fine girl. And if I remember, well, I just couldn't hardly get along without her, because everybody would put up with a man that can't hear. And I've had 5 hearing aids, and none of them work. You see, everybody ain't the same.
Okay, yeah, that's true. When did you meet Betty? Do you remember?
Well, we've been married, Betty, about 10 or 12 years.
We met in
How long, Betty?
76 when we met. I went to work for
She says you met in 1976. She went to work at Riverside.
Yeah, 76.
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
you were married in 1981.
81.
That makes it about 11 years.
11 years.
Right.
I thought it was around 10 or 12 years, yeah.
You bet. Well, that's great.
Yeah.
All righty. We might just take a break for a minute here and rest and get a glass of water and kind of relax, and then we'll be back.
Well, that's a good idea.
Is it?
You just drink water?
Sure. Okay, we'll be back in just a moment. Okay, we're back on the interview now, and what we're going to do, we've got some items here kind of in the script of the history of you and your family. We'd like to visit with you about those. We'd like to go back to when you were a kid. When you were growing up, did you have any sense of whether your family was rich or poor, and what would you say now about your family's economic circumstances when you were growing up? In other words, what did you think about, did you feel you were rich? Did you feel you were poor? What did you feel about growing up in that day and age?
Well, I don't know. As I was growing up, I remember very outstanding, and after World War I was in bed with my mother, and it wasn't so much whether you was rich or poor, but if you wanted a doctor, they'd come out and see you. Today, you have to go and see them. Then you have to wait and wait and wait. Well, anyhow, my mother, when I was growing up, she actually lost her mind. And it was a great worry to my dad. And I think she worried about me because I was pretty sick too, and I was in bed with her. Well, anyhow, whether we're rich or poor, the thing that we was interested in was living. And making money was no problem because my dad and my mother were hustlers, and in fact, the road that we lived on out northwest of Iowa Falls, 6.5 miles, they owned most of the land on both sides of the road. In fact, I had 340 acres of land that I gave to my kids some time back. And that's, if I remember, some of it I only paid $285 an acre. And I think probably it's worth $1,000 now. I have no idea.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah. And when I was growing up, well...
Were you happy as a child?
Huh?
Were you happy as a young child?
Was I happy?
Yeah, as a kid, would you have a lot of fun? Or?
Oh, I used to like to do a lot of things. I used to hill climb, motorcycle hill climb. And I used to do a little racing, not too much, but some racing. And of course, I was always interested in boats and sports of all kinds. And it seemed like things had just kind of fall in together. And my mother, you know, when we moved to town, the reason why we moved to town, if you remember, I told you we moved to town when I was in the 7th grade, 7th and 8th grade. My mother, she went to the old building that just tore down. You're the city council. You know that house that Emery Harris owns? Well, there used to be a fellow named Tangeman. He was a chiropractic. And Mother went there one time about Easter. And she had a treatment, and that she just got well right away. And after all that happened, she was turned out to be one of the best salesmen Winston had ever had. And she, like I said, she hired over 8,000 agents, and Dad drove for her. Dad was a jolly good fellow. He he didn't worry about anything. But my mother, everything had to be just right.
Okay, and you'd say you had a good relationship with your parents.
Very good, very good. I think a lot of my parents, and I give them a credit for my success, what I had. And I've been quite successful with Riverside.
You bet. All right. Now, we talked a little bit about high school, so we'd kind of like to go back there. I'd like to know, what social group did you belong to in high school? What kind of kids did you associate with?
Well,
the kids?
I was a member of the Dirty Dozen. Now, I don't know what the Dirty Dozen is, but I was a member of the Dirty Dozen. And then I also was...
Did that mean you didn't bathe, or what?
I don't know. That was just something we had fun about. And in high school, I was very active, and I played basketball, I played football, and the slogan I had a never give up spirit. And I think that has always been one of my great assets. Never give up. Don't matter what you do, don't ever give up. And that was one of my experiences in high school in football. And then I drove a Maxwell, you know, and that Maxwell was a humdinger. And there wasn't very many kids had automobiles back in those days. Louis Kinney had one. Now, you don't remember him. This is all before your time. You came here in 63.
62.
62. Yeah.
How about, do you remember, are some of these old friends still living, or do you remember them, or have you seen them in the years?
Well, when I get a newspaper twice a week, I read the obituaries, and they're dying like flies. And I don't know, it's kind of discouraging to see the old folks go. And there's so many so younger, and I'm 86, and I never thought I'd live to be that old, because Dad died at 84, and my grandfather died at 84. He was in the Civil War, and he was a great guy.
Your grandfather, what did he do in the Civil War? Did he fight on the North or the South?
Well, I have Aunt Idy, Charlie Mark's wife, George Mark. You know George Mark. Well, if I remember, they gave me all of Grandpa's things, and I have his certificate when he was dismissed from the war.
Discharged, yeah.
Yeah, discharged. And he was discharged, I think, in 1860, something like that.
Okay.
And he was a great guy.
I think the war ended about 1864, along
I think that's pretty close to it, maybe 1867.
Yeah.
I can't remember.
Okay.
But I gave that to the Historical Society, hoping they would use it some way.
Okay, fine. Okay, back to high school. Did you have a favorite sport? Which one did you like best? Football, basketball?
Did I have a favorite sport?
Yeah.
Well, I was mostly interested in the sports that I was interested in, where I played.
So it didn't matter. You liked all sports.
Huh?
You liked every sport then.
Well, I like any kind of sport.
Okay.
Especially racing. I like racing.
All right.
But I don't like to race with my feet. Yeah. I like to sit in the car.
Motorcycle?
Yeah, motorcycles. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Now I'm going to ask you a question. Who was the first girl you ever kissed?
Well, you asked me that a while ago.
Well, we weren't on camera though.
It might have been. It might have been a Pemberton girl.
Uh-huh.
The Pembertons lived east of town, and I just met her not long ago, and I said, "You remember, you were the first girl I ever kissed, but you know, my mind just won't work right now. I kissed so many of them."
Yeah. Okay. How old were you when you kissed her? Do you remember? 10, 12?
Well, I was in
high school?
No, I was in the seventh grade.
Okay. Well, that's about 12, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know how old I was.
13, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you have senior proms in those days? Did you have a big dance at the end of the year?
Yes, I generally emceed most of those things back in those days.
Remember who you went with?
Huh?
You remember who you went to the senior prom with?
I might have went and got my girl from Dow's. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I'd like to ask this question of you. If you could change one thing about your high school years, what would it have been? If you could change something that happened to you in high school, what would you have done?
My high school days?
Yeah. Would you have changed anything? Studied harder?
Huh?
Studied harder?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I never thought about changing anything.
Okay.
As far as I was concerned, everything was fine.
All right. Did you ever go on family vacations growing up? Or did you work all the time?
Yes, that's all we've ever done was travel.
Okay.
Traveled all my life.
But it wasn't really vacation, it was more work all the time.
No, I always worked. I never
Okay.
did take a vacation.
All righty.
It's just like with Riverside. I've never taken a vacation. I've never taken a bonus.
All right.
Everybody takes vacations and bonuses. I've never taken one. Yeah.
All righty. I'd like to talk about World War I maybe and the Great Depression. What impact did World War I have on your family? Do you remember? Did World War I affect
In World War I?
World War I, did that affect you or the family? Now you'd have been about what? About 14 years old, somewhere in there?
Yeah, well, if I remember right, we lost most of our hired men on the farm back in those days. Most of those went to the service, and I don't think my dad went to the service. My grandfather went to the Civil War, and your question was my family in World War I.
Yeah. How did World War I affect your family? You lost most of your hired men, but it didn't disrupt the farming any, did it, or anything?
Well, it made it difficult to operate.
Because you needed more hired hands in those
Yeah,
days.
yeah.
What about the Depression that followed? What effect did the Depression have on you?
Well,
and your
the
family?
Depression was a very fertile thing for me because everybody was out of work, and that's what I was doing, giving people jobs.
Okay. And
I would go into a town like New York or Baltimore or Atlanta, Georgia or Sacramento, and I would run an ad. I would say, wanted immediately, a refined lady for local work, some teaching, nursing, or sales experience preferred. See Earle Fitz in the Star Hotel. And then I would be there, and my wife we would get a corner suit. And back in those days, you could get a corner suit. And my wife, I would take the bedroom and make an office out of it. And they'd come in to see her, and she'd say Mr. Fitz was busy, and I'd take 10 people at a time and talk to them. And if a fire truck went by, I would and they'd look out the window to see the fire truck. I said, "You're not interested, are you?" And I told them to get out of here. I was pretty rough on them, but at the same time, I let them. That's how you get their attention.
That's right. Okay.
But World War, the fact that there was a lot of people out of work, we were giving people jobs, and a lot of them made lots of money. I had one girl in Oskaloosa, University Park. There's a college there, and she made $1,000 a month selling Bibles in the Depression.
Yeah, boy, that's terrific.
Yeah.
Okay. When did you leave home? Or you graduated from high school, went to Ellsworth, and you taught school, and you stayed home teaching school. When did you finally go out on the road yourself?
Well, when I was teaching school, a fellow came to Ames, Iowa. His name was Bob Green. He says he was hiring college students to sell Hurlbut's Story of the Bible. A friend of mine said, "I know a young man out here teaching school." He said, "He's interested in religious education." He said, "Why don't you go out and see him?" So Bob Green come out and seen me, and I signed up. And I worked 3 months that summer. In those 3 months, I made $983.61. And I'd been teaching school for $800 a year. So
Okay.
what did I do?
Yes.
I told them to forget. Everybody thought I was crazy to give up a good teaching job for $80 a month. but I did, and I sold books like mad.
Okay, and so you went on the road, and
Yeah.
from then on you were on the road.
From then on, I was in the book business all my life.
Okay.
And in fact, it's 65 years that I've been in the book business.
Okay, do you really like the work?
Well, I enjoyed it very much.
Okay,
In other words, you like anything you're successful at.
that's right. You bet.
And money was no problem. I always had plenty of money.
Okay. You wouldn't have done anything differently. If you were born again, you'd go back into the Bible business?
If I was to be born again, I wouldn't change what I've done in my life. I've fouled up one marriage, but everyone makes a mistake once in a while. In other words, if you don't make a mistake once in a while, you don't do nothing.
Yeah, that's about right. You bet. You known any famous people along the way? Lots of them. Okay.
I know many, many famous people.
Okay.
Number one is George Vest.
Oh, yeah.
He's the mayor of Iowa Falls.
Yeah.
He's a pretty smart fella. And then I know, you can't believe, we put the name in gold on Bibles. You can't believe the people that we have names. Governors all over, presidents all over, ball players. You can't believe the people that we have. Ken Taylor, for instance, he's a friend of mine. He wrote the Living Bible, and there's just no end to the friends that I've had and the celebrities.
Okay, it's been a great career for you then.
Huh?
I say it's been a great career for you all the way along.
It's been a wonderful, wonderful career. Everything is wonderful. In fact, it's still wonderful because Betty here, she's a wonderful housekeeper. She takes good care of me, and she's here when I come home, and that's worth a lot.
Okay.
It's no fun to go to an empty house.
That's right.
I lived in a Woods Hotel.